Welcome to another episode of Discograffiti's wildly in-depth Beach Boys series, And Your Dreams Come True, where Brian Wilson freaks like you and me get our chance to delve deep into the barely believable history and prodigious discography of my favorite band of all time, and also coincidentally the best, along with a slew of over 45 top-shelf guests, ranging from musicians inspired by their work, family members, documentary directors, songwriting collaborators, Beach Boys authors, producers, touring band members, and for good measure, some of the Beach Boys themselves. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and special thanks goes out to Jeff McAvoy and especially co-producer Dennis Dyken, without whom this series would not have happened. And in this episode, we'll be turning our spray cans on the Beach Boys' 7th LP, Christmas album, along with our special guest, Endless Summer Quarterly Editor-in-Chief, David Beard. And away we go then. Let's wend our way then to Christmas. So, when last we checked in on our boys, Brian has buttoned up the entire Fun in the Sun period by returning to Paradise Cove to shoot the album cover for All Summer Long, and really, whether knowingly or unknowingly, saying goodbye, in a way, to an era of the Beach Boys. Then August 1st, 1964, the Civic Memorial Auditorium show in Sacramento contributes to the Beach Boys concert album, which is released 2 months later after heavy post-production tinkering, at least with I Get Around and Fun, Fun, Fun. And a date that's important to me, September 16th, 1964, Brian would dive headfirst into what I feel is very experimental songwriting with All Dressed Up for School. So notwithstanding Little Saint Nick, which was recorded earlier on, and we'll get to that when we drop the needle on this sucker, June 18th to June 30th, 1964, was the chunk of time in which the Christmas album was recorded. And it was recorded so early on, before even All Summer Long had been released, because they were about to head out on a huge tour and wouldn't have time to record this record and have it ready in time for the holiday season. So June 18th, 1964 is Christmas album session 1. Brian will use a 41-piece orchestra for this new record. Orchestral tracking sessions are done for We Three Kings of Orient Are, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, White Christmas, and Blue Christmas, and a new version of Little Saint Nick with new vocals and without the sleigh bells and glockenspiels. I threw in glockenspiels because I felt like it needed to be pronounced that way on this day, but if you get me tomorrow, I might do it without the June 22nd, instrumental tracking session for Don't Hurt My Little Sister, which is going to wind up on today because that's just the kind of group that we're dealing with here. They're like 2 albums ahead of themselves and already dabbling in the next project. Brian, Dennis, Carl, and Al attend this session, and this was originally written for the Ronettes, where Spector altered the lyrics, calling it Things Are Changing for the Better. On the next day, the 23rd, session number 2 for Christmas album, there's a vocal overdub session for an alternative version of Little Honda. Also an attempt to overdub a Little Saint Nick vocal onto the instrumental track of Drive-In, which is super intriguing unto itself, but a total mismatch, a curio, if anything. But June 24th, that next day, session number 3 for Christmas album, instrumental tracks for Frosty the Snowman, I'll Be Home for Christmas, Jingle Bells, and Christmas Eve. The last 2 go unreleased. Those are the 2 outtakes for the Christmas album. June 25th, the next day, session number 4, tracking only on The Man with All the Toys, Merry Christmas Baby, Santa's Beard, and an early, unsatisfactory to Brian version of Christmas Day. Tracking is now complete. June 27th, 2 days days later, session number 5, vocal sessions begin. Man with All the Toys, Brian and Mike. Santa's Beard with Mike. And Al's very first vocal on a Beach Boys recording session for Christmas Day. This is a historic occasion for the Beach Boys. We have Al's very first vocal. But, interestingly, because we're really months away from Al, his vocal actually bearing his own personality, because it is really a Brian sound-alike in a weird way. That next day, Christmas album session 6, vocals continued. Blue Christmas for Brian, White Christmas, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. June 29th, session number 7, vocals continued. Frosty the Snowman and We Three Kings of Orient Are. And then June 30th, session 8, Christmas album is complete with vocals on Merry Christmas Baby and I'll Be Home for Christmas. Beach Boys album is done, 8 sessions over 12 days, including detours into tracks that'll be on other records. And it is worthy of noting that this is not even the first instance of a follow-up record being completed before the one recorded before it is even released. Madness. And really, it's no surprise, delicate mind frame and personalities notwithstanding, it's no surprise that Brian has breakdowns. No one can withstand this kind of punishing schedule without some kind of breakdown occurring. Nobody can withstand that. So November 9th, 1964, the Beach Boys Christmas album is released. It's 27 minutes and 37 seconds long. It peaks at number 66 on Billboard and number 6 on the U.S. Christmas LPs on Billboard. It's the 7th studio album by the Beach Boys and contains 5 original songs and 7 standards on a Christmas theme. I have to say straight out that I invited you to do this album specifically because, you're a devout Christian and I'm a Jew, and so I need my hand held through this. But really, outside of Vincent Guaraldi, there's not a lot of Christmas albums that I really cotton to over time, except for this one and the Vince Guaraldi one. So talk to me about your relationship with this record and with Christmas music in general.
I'm trying to think what Christmas albums, the standards that I come to every year. I always listen to the Carpenters' Christmas album every year. I listen to the Beach Boys' Christmas album every year. And then, of course, in recent years, Universal's released a conglomerate, which is the Beach Boys' original Christmas album with some of the 77-ish music, and Child of Winter, which was released on Christmas Day, I think, and Child of Winter was released on Christmas Day in 74. And that's a great track and a very interesting kind of odd song.
Specifically as a Christmas album from a rock and roll band, notwithstanding Phil Spector's A Christmas Gift from You in 63, which obviously, Brian was, I like to see him as a Slugworth in Willy Wonka's Factory. He was a guest at one of those sessions. And the record in its own way was devised as a response to the Phil Spector record. And there weren't a lot of rock and roll holiday albums at that time. So This was actually a relatively new thing.
Yeah, and I don't know the arrangement. I don't know who made the phone calls, but I have to imagine that Brian must have expressed some interest in working with Dick Reynolds. Dick started working with the Four Freshmen in 1955.
This was the exciting pull for him for this project, was to get to work with Dick Reynolds. And oddly, the only time that he ever worked with Dick again was to lend a hand on Adult Child, which is wild. I mean, that is absolutely wild. But one last thing about the Spector thing is that Brian did actually play piano on Santa Claus is Coming to Town on the Phil Spector record, but was dismissed by Spector because of his substandard piano playing, which I'm guessing lit a fire under Brian to, not only pay tribute to, but to attempt to outdo that record because of that. All right, that concludes your free sneak peek into today's Patreon episode. If you want to hear the rest of it, just visit patreon.com/discograffiti and either purchase this podcast by itself for $4, or better yet, subscribe at the major tier and get access to Discograffiti's 4 weekly episodes. That's Fridays Monday's free episode, the Sunday Discograffiti Soldiers of Sound episode, which showcases Patreon members and the Elephant Six world, your Monday bonus episode, and your Wednesday early release ad-free super extended director's cut of that Friday's show. Please keep in mind this is entirely how I support my wife and 6-year-old son, so don't risk feeling badly about yourself by not supporting Discograffiti. Become a member so you don't miss a single thing at patreon.com/discograffiti.